Sometimes, you sit down to work and you can hardly get at it. The excitement is so great. You can hardly wait to get your teeth in those old papers that you got to file, You can hardly wait to get them phone calls going. So, has Martha Dean been fooling around with my nose flute again? Bring it up there a little bit, Donald, please. You can tell that all of it. There's a little easy there, Dad. Now, you can just tell, can't you, that the fall frenzy has begun to set in on me already. The blood is flowing like aged molasses through these veins. Bring it up there, Don, there. Yes, sir. You can tell that life is real, life is rich, life is wonderful here on this, the 710 spot, your family spot on the dial. Let's enrich their poor, sodden, nothing mediocre lives. There, we're all ready. It's okay. Now, before we begin tonight's class, I want all of you to sit still in your seats for a moment. Stop fidgeting around out there. And any of you have to leave the room, do it before we get going, please. And those of you who have any questions to ask, please save them for after the class. And those of you who do have to leave the room, please raise your hand right now. Okay, fine. Just go out quietly and do not, please, if you will, do not disturb the rest. And how has your rest been going? Has it been going the way that all things do go, eventually? And speaking of the eventualities, how have you been dealing with those? Lately. Which leads one to suspect that most of us have been late in one form or another. Lately. But forms come in many shapes. There's fat ones and round ones, and big ones and skinny ones. And then, there's just forms, shifting, moving, ephemeral through the night. And on these quiet fall nights when the moon hangs low over Secaucus, on these quiet nights when the traffic hums with a solemn grumble along Route 4, on these nights when those blue lights, those sparkling twin pinpoints that arch out over the George Washington Bridge, picking out the sky. Oh, on these nights, one knows that one is almost alive. Bring it up, please, if you will. Oh, tonight's program, as part of WOR's vast public service efforts, will be dedicated to that jelly mold of actuality called us. Bring it up. Very good. Very good. Of the 6 delicious flavors of gelatinous dessert that quivers like my sister Kate on the plate of last year's pièce de résistance. What flavor are you? Lemon, lime, orange? What flavor are you? Razzmatazz. And what mold do you wish to be cast in? As a matter of fact, I one time mulled quietly on a long winter's night of some various spectacular jello molds that I would like to see brought out on the underground market to frighten little old ladies at their bridge parties. Doing, 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 doing. Use your imagination, man. Come on, nobody knows. It's inside of you. You can let that go, can't you? They'll never excoriate you for using that which is inside of you and allowing it not to come out. Ah, yes. But I suppose we're not necessarily pro or anti-Jello. There are those who live a kind of limp diner on US 6 of existence coleslaw life of time, temperature, and rancid mayonnaise dressings of eternity. But then, you can't live forever, on muscles matana, no? No, indeed. Bring it up, please. There. All right. Now, any questions, gang? Of course, the questions are never easily answered. We have a note here from one of our correspondents on Jerseyana. Now, the reason I'm really, I suppose, a student of Jerseyana is because I feel Jersey more than most states I have known. Jersey has a quality of surrealism, mainly probably because Jersey teeters always nervously on the knife edge of fantasy, reality, and the swamps of Secaucus. Teetering always, and so darting out as it does, sending out little shooting spires of light, little puffs of smoke, Jersey always is attempting to create an image in its own godlike self. I think. Well, of course, there are many types of images that one creates. In the field of Jerseyana, for example, we have a man here, he says, I have lived in New Jersey for 7 years, but I've long since fled to eastern Long Island. However, I can recall getting lost in a New Jersey fog one night last fall long ago. The fog was so thick, motorists could not see out their windshields, but had to open the car door. And while looking at the white line swishing along a fog-covered road, trying to guide my car through the mires of traffic, I suddenly was astonished because out of the murky gloom near the wonderful little village of Lodi rose a 200-foot man in neon-colored tights. He was well-dressed and had an air of dignity and poise. In fact, he looked like a 200-foot neon man of distinction. If I had seen Frankenstein's monster, I don't think I could have been more surprised. Many days later, I learned he was the landmark in front of a large discount men's clothing store. But forever, I see him stalking calm and aloof, surveying the stream of traffic amid swirls of fog. Or perhaps he has stomped off and may be lurking around the Hackensack Meadows, the luminous ghost of Lodi. Yes, old Jersey, the Tinkerbell of the states. We salute the old Jersey. Before we salute anybody else here, would you have a little whoopee thing for the victims out there? Hit it down.
It's a beautiful, clear morning out here at the cave of the 2,500-year-old brewmaster. In fact, it's just the crack of dawn, and the brewmaster has just gotten up.
So when you get up in the morning, do you have a can of Valentine beer right away?
I don't even have my heart beating properly when I get up in the morning. It takes me till 2 o'clock to find out who I am. I often call myself Saul for an hour when I wake up. And my name isn't even Murray.
So do you drink Valentine with meals?
Only with meals, and only after meals, and only before meals, and only late at night. And only in the morning. Only.
Well, sir, I must say you certainly seem to be caught up in the spirit of Valentine beer. Tell me, sir, have you ever been stuck out here in the cave with plenty of cans of Valentine beer and no can opener?
Yes, that happened last Thursday. You know what I did?
What?
If you want to start living a life that's livelier, live it with spirit.
There's more spirit to it.
Razzmatazz, live it with spirit. I presume you're living with spirit out there, friends. We should be thankful for all the things that all these products give us. Spirit, life, vitality, verve. Why, Double Mint will even double everything for you. Very strong, I understand in some states, but that's something else. Yes, we should be thankful. Speaking of being thankful, we've got a couple of other commercials. Let's get them out of the way here because I've got a story to tell. And we've got to get right to it. Do you have that funny little thing in there?
Ever pick up a stranger. Don't put your car
What the heck is
in
this?
danger.
Never pick up a stranger.
The right time to change her.
Fella, you're talking to a lone stranger here. Wise guy. Now here's the time. The time is too late. The temperature, it's colder than you think. Brought to you by Prestone Antifreeze Coolant.
Is a product of Union Carbide.
Very good. Product of Union Carbide. Even if your car has antifreeze left over from last year, play safe. Get a fresh fill now of Prestone Antifreeze with its exclusive magnetic film. The world's most tested, most trusted brand. Don't take chances with a substitute. Never pick up a stranger. You know, my old man was a real Prestone fan. As a matter of fact, I had an uncle who used to drink it. Grenadine. Very good. Matter of fact, he'd strain it through a bread loaf. Squeeze it out, you know. He did. You just run it through some white bread and you squeeze it. And be careful or your eyeballs drop out, you know. Speaking of sodden socks, this is WOR AM with FM, New York. And, you know, it always a little depresses me on one hand. You know, when the Prestone, they've been on the show for many years now. Ever since they heard about the time that I cracked my block. And they've been on the show for years. And it kind of depresses me every year when they come on. And yet I'm glad, you know, somehow are you torn the way I always am every year between a kind of regret that summer is gone and a kind of excitement because fall is here? Do you have that thing going all the time? You know, these are the seasons really that try men's souls. Really, this is the time of the year. This time of the year and the spring when people wind up on window ledges. You know, walking around with the searchlights on them and looking down and hollering, "All right, I'm gonna go. None of you love me a while." Speaking of that, did I ever tell you about the time a searchlight caught me on a window ledge? I told that story, didn't I? I didn't invent it. I mean, it was in all the newspapers, for crying out. It was one of the rottenest things that ever happened to me, in case you're interested. Speaking of rotten things. You know, I don't tell many stories about radio, do I? I think I should. You know, we clam up when we're dealing with our own business. But one of the wildest things that ever happened to me personally in my adult life involved itself with a searchlight. And not exactly on a window ledge, but I was on a fire escape. And that searchlight had me picked out, I'll tell you, where I was like a moth in a flame. I'm serious. I was casting shadows dead that were 40 feet high, and I could hear the fuzz yelling from down below me, 6 stories below me, and they were ready to let me have it with a couple of twin Thompson submachine guns. Let me tell you, when you see, you want to hear about that story? Well, all right, I'll tell you about that story. I used to open up a radio station a long time ago. And, you know, WOR is a 24-hour-a-day station. That is to say, there's always some klutz sitting here in front of the microphone telling you what time it is, what the temperature is, and telling you about how the Norman Luboff Choir is going to sing another selection from The Sound of Music eternally, or Mary Poppins, or some other, you know, great piece of fantastic glop treacly Hershey bar art of our time. But there's always somebody here at WOR. Now in New York, Chris, I guess there are some stations that go off the air here in New York, aren't there? They're not all 24 hours a day. But has it occurred to you that somebody comes in a radio station that is not a 24-hour-a-day radio station and opens up the shop? Yeah, it just comes in and opens up the shop, you know, just like the D'Agostino. There has to be one guy that wanders in at 6 o'clock in the morning and opens the door to the supermarket and smells all the wilted lettuce and looks up and down all those empty columns there and stretches. Oh, it's a rotten feeling, I'll tell you, you know. And yet it's a kind of a good feeling because, first of all, you feel like there's a certain freedom you feel. You feel kind of good opening up the station, but you also feel like you're the low man on the totem pole. Well, that's what the story's about. Old Shep, you know, used to open up this crummy little 2-bit tank station in a 2-bit crummy tank town right by the shores of Lake Eerie, which is a crummy 2-bit tank lake. And this was also in a crummy 2-bit tank state. So, you know, there it is. And I was a crummy 2-bit tank radio operator. So it's, I used to come in every morning at about 4:45, something like that, and the station went on the air at 5:15. Got the scene, and every morning I'd be yanked out of the sack. I lived in this little 2-bit tank hotel, right in the middle of this little 2-bit tank town. And this hotel was one of those hotels where there's all kinds of ladies with orange tights that kind of just sort of hang around the elevator there, and they got yellow hair with green streaks in it. And they always have long golden chains with poodles on the end and high heels, and they kind of drip powder and all that. You know, that kind of hotel. And there was always some wild scene going on in the room next to me, and I had a permanent room there. And I lived on the corner there. Oh boy, I'll never forget the night the fireman ran through and ran right in through the door. It was about maybe 4 o'clock in the morning. I was just really sleeping, you know. And all of a sudden, pow, 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 open up! I jumped up, you know, I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. You know, you're kind of still half asleep. Open up there, Mac, let's go. Pow, pow, pow. You know, I was clean. I was absolutely clean. I'm just lying there asleep, nothing there, nobody with me, nothing. See, pow, pow, open up, Mac. Brrr, the door comes tearing open, and I sit up in bed, and this is in this little 2-bit hotel, and I sit up in bed, and 74 firemen dressed in long black rubber suits with gas masks, was great big. Have you ever seen 28 guys come running through your room with gas masks at 4 o'clock in the morning? And they've got these big hats and axes and hatchets and all kinds of stuff. And they ran right through the room, didn't even say hello, goodbye, nothing. Ran right through the room and out the window. Boy, I'll tell you, you never saw old Shep hit the ground like that. I hit the ground running. In fact, I hit the ground running so hard I ran right into the wall and bounced off of it 3 times before I got oriented and went out the door, you know. Should have seen me standing down on the street there at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with the temperature 7 below zero in my BVDs. The wind howling off the lake. Well, all right, I'm working in this crummy little hotel, and every morning they used to wake me up. And the phone would buzz, you know, one of these crummy little phones beside the bed. I'd wake up. Oh, I work 7 days a week. There's something that working 7 days a week does to you. You don't know what day it is. You don't know what time of the day it is. You don't know what season of the year it is. You don't know what meal you're eating. 7 days a week. And this station was just beginning to make it. They were just on the edge of financial debauch constantly. They were right hanging over the cliff, you know. Have you ever seen these old time movies of Harold Lloyd and that, where Harold Lloyd is always hanging by his fingernails to the edge of a building or a cliff or something like that? Well, that is the kind of radio station that I worked in. It was terrible, you know. They used to wait for guests to the studios, lose pennies. If somebody lost a penny or somebody left behind something, you know, they would rush down and pawn it, and somehow keep the light bill paid. We had this lousy little station that was and everybody on the air, of course, played funny guy. Everybody on the air, it is my considered opinion that the poorer a radio station is, and the more difficulty they are under, and the worse financial problems they are facing, the cheerier the announcers. Have you noticed that? You know, well, it's old Big Dan here, folks. Well, the time, let's see. The time is just 5 minutes past. Did I ever tell you the joke about the oh, George, I'll tell you another Polish joke. But before we go on with another Polish joke, the temperature, well, that was the way our announcers all day long, their eyeballs popping out, their necks with the veins sticking out, and they're laughing it up, and none of them had shoes. It was terrible. In fact, it was nothing to find 3 announcers in the John doing their laundry in the same sink all at once. And they were all earning about an average of $4.50 a month. And I was the chief. I was the big chief. I was earning $7 a month, you see. But for the $7 a month, Don, I had to work all day long. I opened up the station. I closed the station. I did the newscast every hour on the hour. I had 17 different voices. I would come out with my newscaster voice. I had a great news voice. I used this kind of news voice, if you're interested in how I was. Of course, at that time, I was a cool 19, and I would have gone, then in the next room, that 12-year-old announcer would introduce me and say, now, here he is, H.C. Grubbage and the news. Good evening, Americans everywhere. In the news today, and particularly in the Toledo area, we find ourselves once again concerned with a crisis on the civic front. Have we, the taxpayers of the city of Toledo, been consulted? I say to you, no. And that's the news. Good night. You have been listening to H.C. Grubbage, his news and views. Well, 30 seconds later, I would be old Smiley. I'd say, hey, kids, it's time now for Livingston Swing Time. It's old Smiley Lewis coming your way. All right, old H.C. Grubbage, old square, get out of the studio here. And now let's get going. That was the kind of stuff all day long went on. Well, when you face a day like that, it ain't easy to get up. When you know you're going to go through this kind of scene, we had a news machine. Even the news machine was cheap. We had a news machine that had the same tape in it, Don, since before the Boer War. It would type so light, seriously, that, the paper is yellow. The type would come out lighter than the yellow. And you'd sit there, you'd have to hold it up to the light. The one light bulb we had in the studio, you'd hold it up like that, and we had one microphone. I used to say, now we switch you to Studio 7 and Roger Nash. And I would just pick up the microphone like that, and I'd hand it across the table. That was Studio 7. And I'd be at Studio 3A on the 4th floor. And then back and forth we'd go, all of us would sit around. How many of you know that there are stations like that? Well, every morning, the phone would ring in my hotel room at about 3:45, maybe 4:30, something like that. I don't recall exactly, but it was always dark. The phone would ring, and oh, boy, how many of you know that awful, terrible, terrible sound of a ringing phone in your room or an alarm clock in your room when it seems like you have not even gone to sleep yet? And just go, just ring, get out of here, Bob, and it wouldn't stop. Oh, boy, my eyeballs were just kind of lumps, like, I'll tell you, they were kind of like two little burning match ends in my head, and my teeth were like little stumps. And I had this tongue, you see, that was made out of old barbed wire with feet and little hairy things sticking out of it. And I would get up, my head is just kind of, everything is greasy. I'd feel, ooh, and I'd wake up, it keeps going, Well, why? It was not because I was having a life of debauchery or sin. It was because I was working 97 hours a day, and I never got any sleep. And after about a month and a half, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months of this, you never even thought in terms of sleep. You just thought in terms of just falling down. You'd lay there for a couple of seconds. And ringing up, you'd go. Well, I would dress in the darkness. I couldn't stand the light, even. I would dress in the darkness. I would put on the same shirt that I'd worn for, you learn to, I right now can tell you that there are at least 9 different ways that you can get 2 weeks on a white shirt. I know how to do that. All kinds of little tricks. And in the darkness, I never had turn the light on to look for my shirt. I knew where it was. I could just, smell it. And my shirt would be over across the room. Then I'd put it on. It'd crinkle and crunch and drip. And I get the shirt on. I'd pull my pants on, stick my shirt in. And I'm trying to tie a tie. You're in the radio, says you got to wear a tie. I'm trying to tie a tie in the darkness. And my eyes are just, those little black ends that you see on kitchen matches. Oh, a terrible feeling. Just rotten. And I'd check to see if I had my wallet. All I had in my wallet, of course, my driver's license, a couple of little things, my draft card. And then I would be out in the hall. Well, now there's a special smell that tank hotels, 2-bit tank flop house. Well, this wasn't a flop house hotel. This was just a 10th rate hotel. The kind of hotel where drummers stay is what they call drummers in the Midwest, where guys who are in pots and pans for third-rate pots and pans companies stay when they're working on their own little expense accounts. The kind of place that, maybe $3 a day, $4 a day, and their best room, the presidential suite, goes for $7.50 a day, that kind of thing. And so there is a special smell. You know that hotel smell? It's kind of a smell of crushed wood and pulverized paint. It's a very special, I don't know quite what that smell is, but we all know it. And are you aware that same smell holds good all over the world? I have smelled that exact smell in hotels in places like Bangkok. I have smelled that smell in a hotel in Dublin. I smell that smell in a hotel in Glasgow. I smell that smell in a hotel in Beirut. It's the hotel smell. Maybe it's the smell of 1,000,000 hours of lost sleep. Maybe it's the smell of all those people that have lived in there and have gone, and it's not really the smell of people's bodies. It's the smell of kind of second-rate lives. I don't know. It's just, you know what I mean. It's just, it's fun. It's hard to describe it. It's ties, for example. It's ties that have up at the top where people tie their tie, and the knot is there's a kind of a grease that forms up there with that tie. That same tie has been tied for 1,000 years, and it's twisted. And down at the bottom of the tie of the second-rate people, you can always see a little hanging piece of the lining, a little white piece of lining hanging out of it. And the tie is always vaguely twisted, and it's either too wide or just a little too thin. But it's not naturally thin. It's thin because it's been tied too much. And that's the kind of world it was. You could smell that smell. And I go walking along this corridor. Well, I never tried to take the elevator. I always walked down the steps. And every time I would walk down the steps, I've been there for months, living there, barely eking out a measly existence. I say this, that nobody, anybody who has not lived in a bad hotel for a considerable length in his life does not know one important facet of the life of people, especially in the big cities. Now, I'm not talking about flop houses. I'm talking about these little hotels that you see up and down through the 40s. Just little places. There'll be a big sign to say hotel, and there's a little tiny lobby, and there's a tired-looking guy behind the desk. You just don't know what life is like. So I had worked my way up after 5 or 6 months there. Now I had a corner room. Well, a corner room in a 93rd-rate hotel gives you an absolutely unobstructed view of the lower right-hand corner of the parking lot. And every night when I was about to go to sleep, I would look out of the window into this yellow street light that hung just outside of this hotel, just hanging there, and I'd look out, and down below me I'd see a couple of old parked cars, and I'd see a guy skulking along the street, and a lady with a red dress would go sliding by, and I'd see a squad car go through the night. Many's the time standing there looking out through this green cracked shade, just wearing my jockey shorts or something after having taken a shower. The only time you could take a shower in that hotel was 2 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, it had absolutely no pressure. You'd turn the water on, it would just go, and it would be a brown liquid that would squirt on the top of your head. So I would always take my showers at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then it just would go. It was the kind of shower that just sort of spit a little bit. And I would sort of hold it on top of me, and I'd put the soap on the top of my head and just sort of scrub myself. And then I would come out of the john, which was roughly the size of a postage stamp, stood on end. And it had tile that was cracked and little pieces of tile missing. And the paint on the walls of the john really was, I would say, twice as thick as the hide of a rhinoceros. All lumpy and bumpy. It had hand marks and prints. And when you'd open up the medicine cabinet, I remember you'd open up that medicine cabinet and there would be a smell come out of that little slot. The slot that says, put your razor blades here. I wonder what it's going to be like in the year 48 trillion when they dig up old hotels like that and they find 17 million pounds of old used razor blades and all kinds of other stuff the traveling salesmen have put down that slot, you know. So I would get out and walk through that. I'd walk through that corridor and down the stairs. Well, every time I did this, it was always, as I said, maybe 4 o'clock in the morning, there'd be scurrying figures going up and down the staircase. There would be one group of guys trying to get out without paying their bill, and there would be a long line of skulking, shady ladies trying to hide in the shadows as they go sneaking down, and guys sneaking up. And I would come down, I'd be whistling, trying to get my spirits going, because in about a half an hour, I was supposed to be Smiley, see? So I go walking out through the lobby, and there was always this guy named Cliff sitting there behind the desk and kind of nodding and looking down and half asleep, and there'd be 7 empty paper cups full of coffee all around him and a couple of cigar butts, and he was always working on the books at night. I'd say, "Hi, Cliff." And he'd go, "Nah." Already I'm working it up. You see, I'm a morning man. And my job was to open up the station at 5:15. Well, then I would be out in the cold or hot or clammy or rotten or crummy or dripping air. It never was pleasant, really, at that hour of the morning. Not next to Lake Eerie. Are you aware that Lake Eerie right now is in crisis? Lake Eerie has become one gigantic cesspool. It's become an enormous cedar lake. Well, it was already on its way at that time. And the wind would blow in from Lake Eerie, and I would have the faint aroma of 17 miles of garbage scows that would be maybe a half a mile out to sea, and I would also get the aroma of 6.5 inches of sludge, which was on the bottom of Lake Eerie, that came out of all the factories. It just poured sludge into it, all kinds of, and I don't even have to describe what kind of sludge. Holy smokes. There was a slaughterhouse about 2.5 miles away that put sludge in Lake Eerie, Dad, that you wouldn't believe. I mean, you just wouldn't believe. And so I would smell Lake Eerie in the morning. I'd be cold, and I'd go wandering down the street. It was called, the street was called Huron Street, I remember. And the wind would blow along Huron Street like some wind blowing through some ancient organ pipe. Just blow, and you'd hear it sort of faintly howling between the buildings. And then I would arrive at the building where our radio station was. And the radio station was on the 6th floor. And it was a building that had a bank on the ground floor, just like OR here has a bank. Had a bank, and I had a key, of course. I was the morning man. I'd open up the door, and the door would lead into a little anteroom and a kind of little, like a little lobby, and it was an automatic elevator, and I'd hit the automatic elevator and I'd wait. I was the only man in the building outside of somebody who'd be sleeping somewhere in the back of the bank. And I'd hit that little button, and I'd wait, and plunk. And I'd get in my elevator. Do you know the feeling of being in a mechanical automatic elevator at 4:30 in the morning all by yourself? And in a building that nobody else is in, that's dark, and you're carrying your little sack. I used to stop by the White Tower every morning. There was a guy named Red in the White Tower, and he was probably the only guy you ever heard of who had a charge account, the White Tower. I had a charge account, and the reason I had a charge account was because old Red listened to me every morning. I'd come in there, and I only got paid like once every 2 weeks when the salesman that we had, our one salesman could catch up with Harry. Harry ran the paint store, and he was the only commercial we had on the whole station. And every 2 weeks, our salesman named Bud would catch up with Harry, and he would take the $7 that Harry owed us. Then he would bring it back and split it among the announcers and save 25 cents for the light bill. And, of course, the owner was off somewhere on a yacht or someplace, so it didn't matter. We didn't worry about him. And so every 2 weeks I would pay up my little bill at the White Tower. And, of course, what I used to do to kind of eke out a measly existence, I would once in a while, in a friendly way, mention the White Tower, which would mean that instead of course, I didn't get anything free, never anything free, that what he would do, they had a 12-cent hamburger in those days, and they had a 10-cent hamburger. Well, the 10-cent hamburger, of course, was the Super Deluxe King Burger, White Tower. And by once in a while judiciously mentioning the White Tower, he would give me a 12-cent Super Deluxe King Burger instead of the standard skinny model, which you could see through if you held it up to the light. And so we had a nice little working arrangement. And every morning I would take my little sack that had my little piece of Danish. They euphemistically call it Danish here. Out there it was called a Bismarck. Did you ever hear the term Bismarck? Well, the White Tower in Toledo had a thing called, well, that's a big Danish, if you want to call it. In New York, the term Danish means anything you eat with coffee. It can be almost anything. They just say, give me some Danish. There's 17 different kinds of things, and not so in the Midwest. There are things called Bismarcks, and there are things called jelly rolls. Nobody knows, the word Danish is unknown in the Midwest. And so I would put my Danish and my big double cardboard container of White Tower or White Castle coffee, and I'd go up in the elevator, and I'd be the only one on the radio station then. I'd open the door, and we had these glass doors, and the smaller the radio station, again, I must say, the bigger the glass doors that lead into their single little poor sad anteroom. We had great big glass doors. We'd spent more money on the glass doors than on anything else. We had no turntables. We had the only radio station at that time that had wind-up turntables down that were taken out of old Sears Roebuck Victrolas. We had wind-up turntables. We had magnetic pickup heads, and we had a double-button carbon mic. And it was the kind of double-button carbon mic that comes, in the Johnson & Smith catalog. It says, "Fool your friends. I speak into the radio, 298. Well, we had one of those, and we were fooling our friends even in those days. And so I would come up to this glass door, and we had, in gold leaf, we had our call letters. Tremendous gold leaf call letters, about 17 feet high, with a big lightning bolt through it. And all around it, it says, "The magnificent, mighty voice of the Lake Eerie, Maumee County region, where iron meets coal, and the friendly valley of Upper Central we had a slogan that just went on and on and on. The friendly spot on your dial, and the family station, and all that jazz." And when I would light the light, and we had this one flickering little fluorescent light, and it would go on, and the call letters would be staring me in the face. And then I would take out my other key, and I would open this big lock that led in through this glass door, and now I was on my home grounds, on my own premises. And I would go striding through the dark studio, and I would get into the control room. Now remember this, I was a combination man. I was also the engineer, and I had first-class ticket, the engineer, announcer, the whole bit. I'd take a look at the log, which the girl had left the night before, and my eyes are now not quite feeling like two little black burnt kitchen match ends. They're beginning to feel like two open running sores, which is a step ahead, see? And I look around in the yellow light. I check the turntables, and I throw on the equipment, and I'm waiting for it to warm up. I'd wait for the console to warm up. And out at the transmitter would be our transmitter man. I'd ring him up. I'd say, "Hey, you out there, Charlie?" And I'd hear this voice at the other end. "Yeah, how's it going? How about a time check? You want to check the clocks?" And we'd check the clocks, and I would send through a test tone on the line. And we'd rest back there a little bit and wait. And all the while I'm watching that clock edging closer and closer to 5:15. And I would have on the left-hand turntable, I would have the Star-Spangled Banner. And over on my right-hand turntable, I would have my theme, which, by the way, was Runnin' Wild, in case you're interested. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know that tune. And I would wait for the break when the piano would come in. I would say, "Hey, oh, wowee, oh, it's time to get up. Let's get up. Let's come on out. Time to drop your socks and the wowee." Well, that was the opening of my great show. Well, you got the scene? Well, one morning I get up, and my eyeballs are feeling the way my eyeballs always felt, and I'm feeling around in the dark for my pants and feeling for my shirt. And that particular night, I'd had a date. And I'd stayed out to maybe 3:30, 3:45, and now it was 4:15. I'd had roughly 7.5 minutes of fitful sleep. And that buzzer has buzzed, and I have been doing this for about 3 or 4 nights, running. And now things are looking grim, really grim. I get out there on the street, and the wind blows, and I'm beginning to wake up just a little bit, just beginning to feel my way, and I stop by Red's and the White Castle, and I drink down a black coffee. Oh, boy, does that taste good, man. Gee whiz, wow. And I'm walking through the dark streets of Toledo, and a squad car goes past, and a couple of shady ladies go swirling past me. It's a tough town, you know. And I can smell the garbage scows, and already my mind is beginning to click. What am I going to say? Let's see. I got to go think of a couple of little bits here. Little bits. And now I decide that there was a cafeteria. This is where I made my big mistake. There was a cafeteria along the way there. And I decided to stop into this cafeteria for about 5 minutes. I rushed in. I used the men's room there, you know, and it was on the way all night. I fool around a little bit, and I pick up a paper. I'm trying to get my wits about me, you see. And I read a paper a little bit there in the cafeteria, another cup of coffee. I'm beginning to push it. Usually I'm there at least a half an hour early. Well, this time I says, well, I'm going to take it a little easy because I'm a little tired. So now it's 5 o'clock in the morning. And I've just got 15 minutes to airtime. And I arrive in front of the building, and I'm whistling. Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And I reach in my pocket. Wait a minute. What the heck? Holy smokes. I look in this pocket, all up and down the coat and jacket, and the inside pocket. No keys. No keys. I look at my watch. It's 5 minutes after 5 now. No keys. I'll call a hotel. Maybe, sorry. Call a hotel. Crying out loud. Even if I get them, what can they do? They got no keys. And then it hit me. Aha. On the side of the building, there was a fire escape. Now, I knew always that in the traffic department, which faced the alley, they always left that window open because there was nothing down there, just a fire escape, left the window open to air out the joint every night, just a little bit. So I said, fire escape. That's what I'll do. So I go turn around the side, look at my watch. Holy smokes, 7 minutes after 5. Oh, boy, I hope the barber left that fire escape open. And I start swinging up the side of this fire escape. It's the kind, you know, where you jump up and you pull down. I pull it down and up. I go ding, 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 ding in the dark, see? And I go tick, 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 across the first one. Ding, 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 ding. Now I'm on the second floor. Tick, 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 tick. It's dark, see? Ding, 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 ding. Tick, 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 tick. I'm up on about the third floor now. And ding, 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 ding. Tick, 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 tick. Ding, 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 ding. All of a sudden, pow! A white light catches me. A gigantic white spotlight lays it out right across, and I'm spread-eagled. I look down. What? And I hear a voice, stand where you are. One more move and we'll drop you. All right, we got you cornered. We got you cornered on the corner. Now, hold it now. Stand where you are. Drop your gun. Drop my gun? Hey, fellas, I got... Stand where you are and shut up. We're coming up after you. All right, men, move in from the right. Get him over there on the left, Charlie. And I see these guys coming out of the darkness. There were 17 cops with machine guns, Tommy guns, rods. They have got me trapped. It's the first bank robber apprehended in the act in Toledo. Spread-eagled against the wall with that blue-white light. Drop your gun! Well, the rest of the story is history. It made the front page. I spent 2.5 hours down at the local station trying to explain that I was the morning man. I was Friendly Charlie. I was also H.C. Grubbage, who came on with his news and views of the land and the world of news. But of course, these things one takes in one's stride as best as one can, waiting for one's chance. Whenever I see Naked City, whenever you see Naked City, do you ever identify with the guy that's pinned up there on the wall with the light on him? Well, I looked down at that white light, and there was one fat cop, and I could see him. His upper lip was sweating. And I knew that he was just looking for one move, and he'd have another notch on that Smith & Wesson police special. Pow! All right there, drop your gun, Jack. We got you covered. Radio's a wonderful game.